they heard from someone else who heard from someone else that this sucks.
I have no experience with it, but I'm telling you, you're
never
wrong.
touched it, never heard it, never know. I don't know anything about it, but I know
yeah.
it sucks because somebody said it on the internet, said that it does. So, as the title of this video said, everything is flawed.
Mm-hmm.
It is.
This is true.
Which seems to say, looking at it from another direction, nothing is perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And see, we need to define the distinctions between that because that seems to be the two sides that people pick. Either everything's flawed or everything is perfect. Well, not everything. Either something's flawed or something's perfect.
Right.
And there's a hell of a lot of gray area in between.
It's the foundation of a great deal of arguments. And it's understandable, but it's two very different viewpoints. And I think it's important to understand both because there's merits on both sides. And I think the first thing you need to start to understand is everything that exists in the physical space that you could see, touch, and buy, it needs to be made, manufactured. The trouble is we have limitations in manufacturing. There's always cost constraints and things like this, right? It's not practical to make a lot of things. There's certainly things that are theoretically possible, but the costs are just crazy.
You mean to make something as near perfect
right,
as possible,
right?
Yeah, which still cannot be perfect.
Right.
Nothing's perfect.
Nothing's perfect.
Yeah.
So the issue is what you see that you can go and buy and it's actually delivered as a product, it has flaws. Almost always the people that design and make it know about the flaws. They know. They picked those flaws because to them that was their vision.
Well, they left those flaws.
I mean,
they remain because there's no good way to get rid of them.
Or practically.
Right.
Yeah, or
Usually,
the cost to eliminate them would be astronomical.
Almost always it's money.
Or they may be detrimental. If you try to remove those flaws, you may, in fact, create a product that nobody wants to buy.
That too. Right, but I mean mainly the cost one, right? Almost always is you can make it better, but then it costs more. So is it better?
A thing keeps popping in mind about this, and it's the thing that everybody likes to joke about.
Yeah.
There'd be, why don't we have flying cars? Yeah. It's a very simple reason. We could. Totally
we could make
could.
a flying car.
But they'd be $585,000, right?
Yes.
So
are you going to buy one?
It require a bit more training.
Well, they'd have to be
how to use.
That's
for sure.
You know.
Yeah.
And you could make a car with 1,000 horsepower, but it costs more, and most people don't really value it. So, manufacturers don't decide to make it.
Well, even in that has
there's flaws.
That opens up all kinds of flaws.
Sure.
Transmission failure, tire failure.
But you could solve all these problems.
Liability insurance increases.
It's just money, right? Always money.
It's about money, right?
Right.
Yeah,
and it's like that with everything. You make headphones. You could make the most perfect headphone ever, but if it cost $1 million to manufacture, what does it matter?
Well, more
Who's
importantly, if nobody likes how it sounds.
I mean, that too, right?
I mean, yeah. I mean, and that's what it boils down to in audio. It's the same thing. It's like, okay, we can eliminate whatever. Say someone considers this to be a flaw. I don't know, whatever. All right? People pick on measurements. Let's pick on that. There's a certain flaw there, right? It shouldn't be there. Somebody says it shouldn't be there. Get rid of it.
Right.
Okay. Who's going to get rid of it? Not the somebody that just said it's there. Right? It goes back to the original designers, the engineers, the manufacturers. Now, if you ask them, why does that flaw still exist? You could have got rid of it. They're going to tell you why. They'll tell you why. They'll know. You think that if you come up with, say, hey, why there's a flaw, they didn't know about it. You don't think they don't know about it? They made the thing, right? They know everything about the thing.
It's just like this Apple mouse example.
Yeah.
Like everybody complains about it, how you have to plug it in from the bottom to charge it. And you can't use it while it's plugged in.
Yeah.
You think Apple doesn't know that?
Right.
It's not a shock.
They made the damn thing. They made a cognitive decision of the way it's going. They knew how it was going to charge.
Yeah.
And so it's like, so now the real question is not that it's not perfect because nothing's perfect. The question is, why was it done that way? That's the question.
Mm-hmm.
And that would open up the right answers. Now you're understanding the big picture.
It's probably a big lot of reasons.
You'll never get that answer because you'll never talk to the guys that designed it. They're not hanging out on the internet talking about why they did what they did, right? You don't really get that too often.
I think this line of questioning really has more to it than most people would imagine. You see it a lot online. People say they're not intentionally going out of the way to get into a fight, but inevitably they pretty much are, right? In actuality, the things they're saying are very aggressive.
It's kind of like
negative.
that one more beer.
Right, something like that.
Oops, right over the top.
The issue is usually people don't end up seeing it until it's a little too late, right?
Yeah.
But there's a very big difference when you ask a question saying, why is this fault still here? Why does this do this? And say, why did you design it this way? Why did you arrive at this solution? Like there's a trivial difference in tone could be a big difference in outcome in these discussions. And understanding the philosophy behind why somebody designed something some way, if they truly designed it and they truly know, it's a big deal. It goes a long way because a lot of times they will know the thing you're talking about, but to them, it's not important. To them, it doesn't matter. Or to fix this problem, it adds cost, complexity, some issues, some problem. So they thought this was the best product they could deliver for what they were optimizing.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the issue is because nothing could be made perfect, you're always trading off things. You know, you're trading off flaws. Okay, well, we could eliminate that flaw, but now we're going to have a different one. Mm-hmm. You know, I could think of something let's pick on headphones because we design headphones. I could just think of something right off the top of my head, right? In R&Ding a driver in an enclosure, blah blah blah, right? We're tuning it. We're looking at how do we tune it? What can we change to change? We know all the variables that we could do, what we could do because we make the thing. What we could do to make it sound one way or the other, do this, right? So let's say for example that someone says, you know what, I'd like to have distortion at 20 hertz to be below 0.1%, which is really low for 20 hertz, right? Okay. If you see above something, and someone comes up with a random number, someone else says, oh, if it's over 0.5%, it's ridiculous. You know, you shouldn't have that 1%. All right. So now your goal, you're going to say, okay, we're going to show them, right? We're going to make a driver, a headphone, a system that meets this spec, right? So now you go to sell it. First thing that people put on going, this thing doesn't have any bass, right? It lacks bass. I hate it. Nobody wants to buy it.
Right.
But wow, 0.1% distortion and under, it's got it. But
you take the frequency response, you put it on the box and tell people, look at the bass though, it's got bass.
Yeah.
They listen to it and they go, well, I don't hear it.
Yeah. And the reason would be because in order to bring the distortion that low, you had to drop or filter out the bottom, and you had to limit the excursion of the driver so it can't distort. So you solved the problem, right? You solved the problem with the distortion, but now you created another one in that it doesn't sound full like some other headphones do that have higher distortion of bass. And I mean, this goes on and on. You could look at the speakers, or the speaker designs are like that. Anything where humans are perceiving something. It could be wines. People pick on wines as the same thing. Beverages, foods. When you go after one thing, only one thing.
Yeah.
You're screwing something else up.
You go for
you know?
Use the word character.
Yeah.
The thing that keeps coming to mind is like Dodge Hellcats, right? When they first came out, people bought them for that one main reason, right? 707 horsepower, right? But there'll be people that are like, that's outrageous. You don't need, right? So you don't need, that's the flaw is that it has 700 horsepower. And,
big flaw.
Yeah, and Dodge specifically put skinny tires on it so it wouldn't get traction, right? So what did people start doing? Put slicks on it, take it to the track, and then they were breaking drive shafts.
Oh, right.
Right?
Well, that was their cheap, dirty solution to breaking drive shafts was put smaller tires on there, not thinking that aftermarket exists.
It works. Yeah,
right.
Sort of.
Yeah. So
but
now
they had to put a new drive shaft in
right. Yeah. But see, again, they probably, whatever had to happen to get that car out there, right, for sale, marketing probably said, we got to have this car now. No, we needed it yesterday, not now, and we ain't got time to redesign the drivetrain. Put it out there, we'll deal with it.
Or it could have been they knew their target audience, and all they wanted to do was burnouts, so it wouldn't matter.
Yeah.
Right? It wouldn't get traction anyways, but people wanted to race them. So
there is a lot of stuff like that. And sometimes when you make a product, the reality is you don't always know who's going to buy it. And you might say, well, what does it matter who's going to buy it? It's a big difference oftentimes.
Because it's kind of important to know.
Usually you're making a product trying to optimize these negatives for the person that's buying it, so that these types of people, the group of people that are buying your product, are going to think it's the best product in the market, right? That's the goal. And people have different tastes, so that's possible. A lot of times, most products you can make towards a small group of people that are going to think it's the greatest. And they'll go around and tell people how great it is and stuff, so they market it for you, right? And it makes sense to make it for that rather than make it for absolutely everybody, because in a lot of markets, that's not really possible. Like, you look at cars, can you make a car that works for everybody?
No.
Not really, no.
There's
Because
too
people
many
want
variables.
SUVs and vans. Some people want slow cars, fast cars, whatever,
Just
right?
the way the gas pedal reacts or the brake
Everything.
pedal can affect the person's perception of a
Yeah.
car. You think about the simplest things, the steering wheel, how easy is it to turn or how hard is it to turn?
Right.
There's all kinds of, the windows, how clear can your vision be? Maybe you don't care. Maybe you never look in the rearview mirror. You don't care what's back there. So there's all kinds of
safe
factors.
cars, not as safe.
Yeah,
cars,
you think about it. That's such a complex topic.
Incredibly
it's crazy,
complex.
which is why you have so many cars.
Right.
And it's kind of the same in audio. It's the same deal.
Similar
That's
enough.
why you have so many speakers and so many amplifiers and so many headphones and so many cables and so many rooms and
Right.
so many pads and so many foams and so many room treatments and so many. It's
Right.
just
I mean,
crazy,
if
the
there
variability.
was one perfect headphone that just across the board price everything was perfect, well then why would anything else exist?
You'd be done. Yeah.
That's not reality, because inevitably things cost money to do, and usually it costs more money to do something better. So you're going to have a range in tastes and character and performance or whatever, right? I think most people understand that, but sometimes reality is manufacturers do miss the mark. They make a product that they thought this type of person was going to buy, and maybe a slightly different type of person ends up buying it.
Mm-hmm.
So to this group that now thinks this is the best thing for them, there is a flaw. So that is a reality. And I think this could condition people to think, well, this should have been a different way. But it's not that they didn't know they were making it for someone else, right? So to some extent, there's a lot of complexity and moving parts with making a product.
Well, that's what I've seen, though. Like, you see this all the time where people come out and go, well, why would you purposely make a product that has a problem? And it's like, well, because everything has a problem. Everything has problems.
Right.
And you can only deal with so many problems on a product before you call it done. And, and that's the whole idea of this video. The title of this video is Everything's Flawed. Everything's got a
But
problem.
usually, if you're trying to solve one specific problem, you would lose like what you were actually after. In the pursuit.
Well, sometimes leaving the problem is better than solving it, because you go after that. Again, we talked about, you go after the problem, but now you've caused other problems, and they may not be something that is in the same realm of a problem. It might be a totally different realm.
Well,
it's
yeah,
a
not all
subjective
problems are
problem.
created the same.
Yeah, it's not even, about black and white. It's a subjective problem,
Right.
where nobody wants the thing. So what good is it if you eliminate the if you eliminate certain faults that people actually want and appreciate for whatever reason?
Sometimes people do want faults.
They
And
just,
I think
they're accustomed to it.
supercars are a good example of this, because a lot of times people do think that faults in a mechanical device like that gives character, right? And that's one of the common complaints people have with things like EVs, because they have fewer perceived faults in the driving characteristics.
Right.
But it's a difference of, say, McLaren to Ferrari or something, or Lamborghini. Maybe the McLaren solves things with technology. So they say, oh, this is a fault, let's solve it. And they do, right? But inevitably, that means other issues arise. Maybe it's dramatically more complex, less reliable, these things. Whereas another car doesn't have the hyper-complicated thing to solve the problem, but it has the fault.
You see, the one thing when we're talking about all this stuff, the one thing that is in common is the fact that all of these things that we tend to key in on are pushing the envelope. The hypercars, the high end of audio, the high end of anything. You're pushing the envelope to get where it is. And so now the things even though nothing's perfect and everything is faulty, the faults are minimized. So now what remains, even though there are faults, because nothing's perfect, there are faults, are they good faults or bad faults?
That's
For
subjective.
you,
Well, yeah.
right, therein lies the problem.
Well,
Right now we're talking about
I got-
who's fitting the fault.
I try to get away from all the car analogies, and I finally got one.
Yeah,
And it's Leica.
yeah.
That highly flawed cameras, right? I mean, manual focus, right? So they got no anything, right? Everything's manual.
Basic.
And that's what people are looking for when they use them, right? They want lenses with character that aren't perfect, right? You're looking, so yeah,
Expensive lenses
It's
at that.
expensive
Yeah.
and highly flawed, right?
But what
it's
they
definitely
do
worse than
Yeah.
like a $1,000 Sony camera, right?
But what they do
that's what
they
people are
do
looking for.
well.
Yeah,
Yeah. It fits a certain profile.
The interesting thing is, in a lot of communities, that's accepted. Like you go on camera forums, you say, "Oh, I got a Leica, this, that, the other." It's very uncommon for people to attack you and say, "Oh, you're stupid. You're the worst person ever. You shouldn't buy that. Don't you know this
well,
and
it
that?"
happens,
Right?
Yeah.
It does, but dramatically less often than it does in audio, which is curious. In audio, it's so common. People will personally attack people because they bought something that this person disagrees with, which is very curious how it's such an emotional.
Or they
response to
heard
people.
from someone else who heard from someone else that
Yeah.
this sucks. Yeah.
I have no
you know.
experience with it, but I'm telling
Yeah,
you, you're
never
wrong.
touched it, never heard it, never know. I don't know
get that
anything
in a lot
about
of
it, but
things,
I know
yeah.
it sucks because somebody said it on the internet. Said that it does.
It's the same thing with cars. People will say, you shouldn't have bought that. You could have built something better for less. Or you could have bought a pre-built computer. Why did you bother building one? Or instead of buying one, you should have built one. And it goes both ways, right?
You know, you were telling me about like one thing I know. When we talk about food. We were looking at macaroni, not noodles, right?
Yeah.
Prepackaged noodles, stuff from Italy. It's all this stuff you see comes from Italy nowadays.
Pretty much, yeah.
And you were saying that they use this brass something.
Yeah,
or-
brass dies, yeah.
brass dies to draw the what do you call it? To explain this.
Well, yeah.
What's the difference?
They use, it's brass or then they don't say. And if they don't say, it's probably Teflon. So the Teflon lasts longer, and so it's cheaper to make it that way.
So this is they're drawing the dough. What do you call it? The dough through this die to
Yeah.
shape the noodle.
Yeah,
And they have different materials they use.
yeah.
But the most sought after is
Usually brass. Because it gives a texture. So
just polished brass or what?
yeah, they're just little brass
Yeah.
little dies.
Really? So it gives the noodle a texture,
Yeah.
which equates to what? So you're boiling a noodle in a pot of water, and when it comes out, it's still, and you go to chew it,
Well, it still has that texture.
it's a
So it
different
holds sauce
texture.
better.
Ah, yeah. See, now you
It's
look
not
at
smooth because you get the cheaper stuff and it's that perfectly smooth, glassy.
And ever
finish.
since you told me that, I never thought about it, but now I'm starting to look for rough noodles, which originally I thought the smoother the noodle, better. I mean, the rough look kind of look, and I'm thinking, now I'm looking for roughness because I never thought about the fact that
well, it's pretty obvious.
it's
when you look
actually
at
the
it, yeah.
sauce is kind of sticking to it. I mean, if you
Right.
got sauce with some oil in it, it sticks better than others. Some just kind of roll off. It depends on the sauce. If you make it yourself, blah blah blah.
Well, that's actually a pretty big reason
think
why
about
there's
it.
different noodle shapes, though, because they have
Right.
different surface area.
Yeah.
And as a result, they hold different amounts of
Yeah, but it, just out of like
toppings.
standard
sorts.
spaghetti, though,
Yeah.
you can get both.
Which you don't even think about, but we're actually talking the surface of the surface
Yes.
being smooth versus rough on a noodle, and completely changes the experience of eating it. And I mean, who thinks about that?
Well,
Some people do, but
I mean, I'm sure back in the day everything was like that, but then they figured out we could do it cheaper, easier, faster if we use Teflon and all this.
Yeah, and I actually noticed some packaging would mention the fact that they use brass dies, which
Yeah.
is, I guess, a feature
Yeah, sure.
for macaroni in general. But but I'm looking at it now and I'm seeing some of this stuff, and it was, some of the stuff is rougher than others out of Italy. And I'm thinking, oh, maybe that was made with brass. I don't know. Maybe they have another way to do it, to change the texture. Maybe there's some high-tech way they run it through a roller that has a rough surface.
There might be. I don't know.
I don't know.
doesn't always mean it's better, though, right?
No.
Still
right.
preference there. It depends on what you're doing
yeah,
with it.
sure. And I mean, some people argue that there's nothing like making it fresh,
Yep.
where it's not, dehydrated and you're rehydrating until you're fresh, which I've had that too, and it's got a different chew
It's
and a different
different.
texture. And
It's not necessarily butter, though.
agreed. So it's funny, but it's just there's subtleties to everything that, if you knew the background story, and I think that's kind of important. I think people in general should be more, what would you call it?
Receptive
Open-minded.
to the origins.
Yeah, right. And understand that there's probably reasons, there's almost always reasons why things are done the way they are,
Right.
or not. And, it's something to ask, not bitch about necessarily, but to ask why is it done that way? Think about why it's done that way.
I see another one. It was an automotive one that popped in my head. I can't help it. It's like as soon as there was people, especially back in the day, that as soon as automatic transmissions came about, it's like, well, why do manual transmissions exist? They should have stopped existing in like 1942 or whatever, right?
Sure.
Because why would you want to change the gear when you could have a machine do it for you, right? Same kind of thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense.
It's the feel of the drive.
Yeah.
It's you. Some people appreciate driving differently than others. Some people just want to get from point A to point B. Don't give a shit what they're in as long as it gets them there.
There's limitless,
know?
limitless examples of this, and that's the reality.
Like I'd say, who the hell would
Open,
want to buy
honest with
a
these
Ford
things.
Mustang? Like to me,
Oh.
it's just like just a spin the tire box. You
A
know,
lot of people
the
feel that way,
5.0, the
unfortunately.
5.0 has been in there for 100 years.
well, it's changed.
Now we're gonna get angry Mustang.
Yeah,
people.
right. But I get. But if I mean, but I like what I like about the Mustang is the look. I like the look, even the more modern ones.
Right.
I love the look of it. You know, I don't think I'd want to own one.
Isn't
but-
it nice that you could talk both positively and negatively
Yeah,
about something, though?
right.
Because curiously, you don't see much.
Well, there
of that
are
online.
positives to everything.
Almost
it's just
always.
not. It may not be your thing, but you could get why other people. You could try to understand why other people
Yeah.
would want it or like it. You know, yeah. I think
Make
that's
the world a little greener if that
yeah,
happened.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
I think that's a cool way to go. You know, it's the you don't need to argue about stupid shit.
Well, you could argue about things,
Yeah,
but try to understand what the other person's saying,
Yeah.
rather than just attacking them blindly and saying, "Nope, you're wrong, I'm right."
We
Because
we seem
then
to
no
be
discussion happens.
we seem
right?
to be skewing in the
Oh, yeah.
way of the world, but we
Oh,
know.
yeah.
I
Unfortunately.
guess we see this more and more often in everything we do in life. You know, people are really the last couple of years. I think since people COVID and everyone
It's
through
getting
that,
worse.
people are just on each other's nerves, and they're not realizing they need to back off. Back away, relax. I think it's happening more this year as things are settling in. People are going more vacations.
Yeah.
They're getting back to kind of normality. So I think it's happening. But yeah, people need to relax. I think the bottom line is just relax. It's not. This isn't life or death shit we're talking about here.
Unfortunately,
The
the
color of
real
your
issue,
macaroni ain't going to change whether you live or die. The shade of it.
the
or
issue is negativity
texture.
works. Being positive doesn't get the publicity and press as being negative. So it works. People on YouTube, they always talk about, there's one fatal flaw or whatever. They always have a negative title, or it leans towards negative or shocking or surprising. And it's just because it works, right? Humans want to hear the negative more often than the positive.
Yeah, this sucks catches a lot more attention.
Then this is
It's like
great.
This is great,
everything's
yeah.
perfect.
Yeah,
Well,
right.
You don't
okay.
want to hear that for some reason.
Crazy as
right?
that is.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, as we have more direct feedback with marketing, like on YouTube and stuff like that, you have incredibly detailed analytics of where people saw your video, why they clicked on it, and where they came from before, how long they watched it, and what parts they watched, and stuff like that. So people over time are tailoring it more and more to what keeps people watching, which is a very different thing than what people want to see, right? Because they don't necessarily watch what you want to see
Well, it's kind of like creating an addiction. It's kind of like
to some extent.
nicotine in cigarettes, right?
Yeah. But we're getting all this data and it's feeding into it. It's feeding this addiction.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense, and it not that it's necessarily a negative, and as long as it doesn't affect your life, where it starts to, you're somewhere along the way you're falling off a cliff because of it, where YouTube I don't see doing that, but I know I've seen that in some of the younger generation with video games, where every waking hour might be spent doing that, and it gets to a point where you're what else are you missing type thing. You're missing
It can
other
be
things,
disruptive, sure.
So yeah, you gotta. That's the deal with life, is you gotta balance it out, really. But anyway, yeah, I don't know why we're going philosophical
yeah.
here. Yeah, the idea
What's
was
sort of the whole issue with this situation?
I guess, but the reality is everything is flawed, just like the title
is.
says. You call it clickbait, whatever you want. We're negative on this one because everything is flawed. And no, we're not actually negative about it. We're just being real.
This is realistic.
It's real.
It's realistic.
Yeah, we're realists here. Yeah, nothing is perfect. So let's come at that direction. Let's come at the direction. Let's everyone try to do that. Come in the direction that understanding that nothing is perfect, and that imperfections exist many times for reasons, many reasons, multiple reasons. And try to understand or find out what those reasons are. And that would get you into the reality of the people that do it for a living, the people that actually are doing this. They understand why, because they do it. They made the decisions. They know why they made the decisions, that it's made away a certain way. It goes for everything, for the most part. From a noodle being extruded to a die to a car, a complex component like an automobile with tens of thousands of parts.
Yeah, that's a lot of decisions.
Yeah, there's a lot of decisions that come together to make the whole in that bad boy. It's not like a monocle lens, you know, where you got one part with maybe a frame. And okay, now even though the decisions, think about the decisions of just how to make a lens properly. Just one lens, piece of glass. Think about all the decisions that have to be made.
There's a lot with
You
everything.
think you could just break that down into probably hundreds of things, right? The type
Just
of
the
glass.
materials.
Absolutely.
What sets up the quality
Yeah.
of glass, the materials that the glass is made of, you know? How hard does it need to be versus soft? You want soft, hard glass.
No, coatings.
Resistance to scratching, so coatings,
Yeah.
the shape, you know, how big the diameter does it need to be versus
Magnification.
or small.
Multiple magnifications.
Yeah, I mean, just setting up just a single lens. You think about what goes into it, and every one of those decisions had to be made for a reason, you know.
What I do see encouraging is you're seeing more and more interest in people showing the hows and the whys, the manufacturing, and people like engineers and designers talking about products. You are starting to
great.
see more of this on YouTube. So that's good. So hopefully things start to come around and people start to be a bit more understanding. That's not to say you should forgive faults and flaws, right? That's not what we're trying to get across here.
Nope.
It's just, if you say this is stupid because it has this bad thing, well, this other thing has a bad thing too, just maybe you agree with it. Maybe
Right.
other people don't. So everything has a fault. It's a question of what has the least faults for you personally.
Yeah. What's the best, or another way to put it is, what's the best fit for you,
Right.
regardless of looking at faults. You know, what's the best fit for you? And then sometimes it's just an emotional connection. It's just an emotional thing. So anyway, yeah, we're getting a little too something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot here.
Yeah.
There is a lot to chew
Keep
on.
going at it. You know.
Yeah, but yeah, I think people, you know, I think if people were more tolerant of one another's likes of faults, because everything has faults,
Yes.
then the world would be a better place. We
Maybe
all
a
have to
bit
be
more
more
discovery could happen. Maybe people could
Discovery is
kind
good.
of like
Yeah,
understand
yeah.
a bit more.
Yeah.
Mustang and Camaro guys getting along.
Yeah,
Yeah.
look at that. Just imagine.
In fact, they should have meets together. Why not?
Good luck.
Hey, man, I love your tires. I mean, rims and tires, and most of them, you know, they're not running stock. So I mean, there are common ground.
There's common ground, yeah.
Here.
It's like we both have
exhaust
V8 motors.
systems.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. We like to make noise.
Yeah.
You know, exhaust systems. You know, yeah. And oh yeah, you think about all the things you could do, or even just simple things like air filters. You know, what's the best one you found? You know, what are like two choices and
Yeah, pretty much.
but I mean,
K&N.
there is common ground.
Of course,
The kind
always
of
is.
what kind of gas do you like to use? You go to Sunoco? Do you go somewhere else?
People always focus on the negative first, though, and that's the unfortunate reality.
Yeah,
There's a little more to it than that.
yeah, yeah. And because nothing's perfect and everything is flawed, let's try to understand that better.
Yeah,
It's simple, really.
so easy.
Simple.
Well, implementation's hard.
Yeah.
Damn hard. Damn difficult. Stiff is the word. Hard, stiff, firm,
Uh-huh.
rigid.
It's a
Too
rigid
rigid. Yeah,
implementation.
it's a rigid. Yeah, it's too. Yeah, rigid. Rigidity is a bitch.
Okay.
Thanks everybody for watching. Click like, thumbs us up. Take care.